In this lecture, we're going to be looking at the process of marking seams. This is a way of manually customizing our UV object by inserting seams into it. The more complex an object is, the more likely it is that you may require seams. We can create seams to use as markers to determine where on our object it divides into its 2D form. So let's create some seams for our basic objects. If we go into Blender, right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my default layout and I'm going to select UV editing. So now I've got my two required panels. I'm going to press the N key here because we don't need the grease pencil, and I'm going to press the T key here because we don't need the toolbar. Next, what I'm going to do is I don't need the faces at this point, so I'm going to get rid of the faces by changing my viewport shading to wireframe. So now I'm in wireframe mode, so I can see only the vertices and edges. Now, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Tab to go into edit modes, and let's see what it looks like from a normal unwrap. So everything's selected, I'm going to press U and unwrap. So basically what happens here is that our object unwraps, but we have every single face one on top of another. Now that's no good if we want one face to be different from another. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo that. And now I'm going to press A to deselect everything. So now we're going to create a better UV map by creating seams. To do that, we need to know which seams we are selecting. So we need to go into Edge Select mode. And if you're following along, try and do it exactly as I do it. So you want to try and create seams along edges where you can literally split your object. So I'll give you an example. I'll select 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, so that the seam comes up, 6, 7, 8. So we've got that entire seam going throughout our cube. With all of these selected, I'm now going to press Ctrl and E. And the option we want is Mark Seam. So we're going to left click that, press A to deselect everything, and now we can see that some of the edges are highlighted in a dark red colour. This indicates that these edges are seams. So let's try unwrapping our cube again. Select everything with A. Remember, it's very important that you select your entire object in order for it to be completely unwrapped. Press U on our keyboard and select Unwrap. And would you believe it? Now we have a much better UV map because we have all 6 of our cubes, all 6 of our faces evenly distributed across our UV map. Fantastic. So that's one example. Now let's try a slightly more complex example. Let's try it with a cylinder. So I'm going to press A to come out, and I'm going to go into object mode, and we're just going to move this cube to the side because we don't need it now. Next, I'm going to create my cylinder. Don't forget we're still in wireframe mode, and I'm going to press Tab to go into object mode. Now let's see what this looks like without marking seams first of all. Press U and unwrap. So traditionally your UV unwrap, if you have no seams, will attempt to do 2 things at the same time. It will attempt to get everything inside the UV map, which is what it should try and do, but it will also attempt to use the whole of the UV map. And what often happens, such as with the cube and with the cylinder, is you get faces layering on top of one another, and a lot of the time you might not want that. So Ctrl Z to go back. This time we want to mark our seam by first of all deselecting everything by pressing A. We want this top face, if we go into solid view, we think this top face should be on its own, as this face should also be on its own, and all of these faces we'll want to sort of roll out across our UV map. So I'm going to do this by pressing Alt and click, so we've got one face selected, Shift Alt click for the second face, and we just need to select one of these edges, so let's select this one. Next I'm going to press Ctrl E and mark seam. A to deselect everything, and we can now see that we have our seams if we go into wireframe mode. Now let's select everything and press U and unwrap, and there we go, absolutely perfect. So now we've got our two circular faces, and we've got every face that makes up the connection part of the cylinder, which has been lined up very nicely, very evenly across our UV map. So there we go guys, that is how we can use seams and mark seams to create better UV maps.